Hi guys, it's Claire's and welcome to the first holiday tutorial for the season. Super excited for this one. I have a lot of ideas, so we'll be doing quite a few different things in the upcoming weeks, but this is number one. We're going to be doing a holiday ornament. And what you're going to need is your silver black velvet in the 4, Princeton in the 8, silver black velvet in the 8 as well. So I'm just keeping them aside. I'm also going to be using a pencil and eraser, obviously. And we need something round to create a circular shape. And so I just have my Canson paper here. That's what I'm using. And I'm just going to be doing a circular shape. I've used this before for one of the wreath tutorials I've done, and so it doesn't give me a perfect circle, but I'm okay with the slight bit of curvage that it's giving me in the center. At the edges. So once I have this done, we're just going to do a couple of little things to kind of add, to make it look more like an ornament. And the first thing we're going to be doing is adding like a rectangular box at the top over here, and that's going to be the holder, I guess you could call it. Just want to make sure I get it fairly in the center. So just kind of like a rectangular box is fine. Just be mindful of the ratio, the sizing ratio between that and the circle. And I think this is not bad. It's decent. Maybe slightly off center, but that's okay. Actually, maybe it's not okay because I'm a little bit super picky that way. So I'll just add a little bit more on this side. And I think this should be better-ish. Yes, that's fine. All right, so once we have this, I'm just going to erase this bit off. And I am going to give it a little bit of a embellishment. So I'm just going to add like little frills at the bottom of it. You can actually just give it 3. I think giving it 3 big ones is better than giving it several. So let's just do 3. So 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, so we have that. This is just slightly off kilter, but it's a loose drawing, guys, so don't be too picky about stuff. It's okay if it isn't as perfect. I'm giving you advice. I hope I can also manage to take this advice. All right, so this is just going to be like a horseshoe shape. And this is the little hook on top of it, and we're just gonna so you have 2 options at this point. You can either just have a ribbon hanging from the top, or if you really want to do like a bow, which is what I'm gonna do. So it really depends on your drawing skills at this point in time. I know I'm testing your drawing skills. I'm just adding another rectangular box here, and then I am doing a curve like this, and then I'll do another one kind of like this, or I don't like this shape. Redo it again. I'll just have it down this way. Perfect. And then I'm just doing a second line mimicking what we've done previously. And the same thing here. And we are good. Now just keep in mind one of the 2 sides needs to be thinner, because obviously the width of the bow isn't quite like facing us when you realistically look at it. But this is honestly just for guidance. Once we kind of do the loose style of painting, we're not quite going to go with how this looks, but this is literally just for guidance to see where we want things to be. And lastly, if you want to add any kind of ends to the bow, you can totally do that as well. I'll just add one here. And then obviously we're gonna have to like erase some of this bit. And give it a V, or you can just give it a straight line. It's entirely up to you. And then I'll do another one. I don't like the V too much. Looks a little bit too, there we go, it's better. All right, and then we have on this side, let's do one over here. And we can kind of make it seem like it's going to the back so we don't really see it, but there's a hint of it there. All right, and then we are ready to begin our coloring. So the first thing I want to do is get my greens down on this. So what I will be doing is using a combination of 3 different greens. This one is the umber green. This right here is just called green. And this is yellowish green, or greenish yellow. Sorry, yellowish green. And these are all from St. Petersburg. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to use the umber because it's the most faded or not as bright of the 3. And I'm getting it on my little palette, and I'm just going to mix a little bit of this yellowish green in there just to kind of give it some pop so it doesn't look too forlorn, I guess. All right, so using the number 4, I'm just going to go ahead and get some leaves inside. So you can use the number 4 or even use the number 8. It's entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a variation of different leaves, and we're going to strategically place them all around, and they are going to form the shape of the ornament. So first things first, we're going to do one. Let's do one going this way, and I'm just going to do basic leaves, leaving some white space in between. And then once I have that, I'm going to kind of go ahead. I'm actually contemplating adding the darker green in the centers while we have this. So yes, I'm just dipping some of the darker green and getting it in the centers just to give it a nicer pop. Then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing in a couple of other places. Let's do one over here on this end. And just adding the nice soothing leaves. Soothing to do, that is. And then once I have that down, I'm just going in using the tip of my number 4. I'm getting the dark green and I am adding it to the center and to the stem of the leaves. Maybe even do a stroke if you want for the leaves here and there. Okay, then once I'm going to go back in, get some more of the umber. At this point the green is changing. That's okay, you can have variations of this all over. It's kind of nice. Let's do another one over here on this end. And I'm just going to have the leaf kind of doing a little twisty thing. Try and give your leaves some direction and movement. It's always nice. And keep them loose, keep white space in between as best as you can. And one more, and that's good. And now I'm going to get some of that darker green and just add it in the center and just at the tips of the leaves at the bottom where it touches the actual stem. All right, so there we go. We have that. And now we're going to go ahead and do a couple of other variations. And for this one, let's just do some that are slightly darker. So I'm adding a lot of the dark green, and I'm going to go ahead and using the same brush, I'm going to add a couple of them here and there. Let's add one over here. And these are going to be similar leaves, but more frequent as opposed to random like these. So these are kind of like the fern style of leaves, I guess you could say. So just giving it some darkness there. Just gonna add some more because I want these to pop more than these ones over here. So then once I have those, I'm gonna do one over here as well. I want to keep the center fairly open because I was thinking we can do a nice floral possibly in there. Where was I thinking to do this? Yes, let's just do one this way here. The beauty about doing something like this is that it's so many options in terms of how you can do this, and it's thrilling at the same time to kind of man that ship in terms of like where you want what to go. Okay, I wonder if that made sense while I'm doing this, but you know what I mean. Like, it's just so many options. Are you making the right choice? Will you regret it later on? And if you do regret it later on, just kind of do it again, I guess. All right, I'll do one more and then let's kind of go on to doing another leaf or another kind of, so I have one facing this way, this way. Let's do one this way, like facing inward. And so these are the big leaves. Let's do the other ones. The next ones we do, make them a lot tinier so that they don't stand out as much. And there's a good hierarchy of things in our work. Otherwise, if everything is large and big, then we kind of lose the focus of where the eye should go first. It's a design thing. All right, so this is done. I'm gonna leave this as is and let's go on to the smaller one. All right, so for these next ones that we're doing, we're gonna be using the umber and the raw sienna. And here's how that's going to look. We'll also keep some of the green here just in case. So I'm just getting some of the raw sienna directly from my palette. And I am just going to do one guy over here. So we are doing the stem first. And it's a nice brown. And then I'm just going to give it a tiny stem over here. And we want to make sure there's like a good amount of color on there. Then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and get some of the green and the umber. But more of the umber. And then using the number 4 or a thinner brush if you have any, we're just going to add lines to create our little Christmas tree kind of fur. All right, so we've got this one done. I know this is a thicker brush, but if you have another thinner brush, just take the brush, get some of the other green that you have, and then just using the tip, just at the tip of the brush, just kind of go in and add a couple of lines. And what this does is it just gives us a variation of color in the greens. Make sure there's still a lot of white space in between though, because we don't want to lose that. And if you touch some of the brown as you're creating this, that's totally fine because it creates a nice effect. And then I'm just going to add a couple more at the top to kind of give it some more definition, or make it seem like it's a loose version of it just kind of fading off. And then just pulling some this way. All right, and I'm going to leave it at that. And then back again we go to the raw sienna, and we apply some of the brown. I'm just going to put it on here a little bit. I guess this will be a slightly longer process because I'm using the number 4 to like do both. But if you have another brush handy, you should absolutely do like add that in. So I'm going to use another one. Let's do another one over here. This came out slightly thicker. That's okay. Going back in, we're just going to add lines to sort of give it a nice, cute effect. And then just getting a little bit of the darker green just to kind of throw a few strands in there while it is nice and damp to give us a blending of greens. All right, there we go. So we have one there. Let's do another one. Let's do another one over on this end. Now both are facing downward. That bothers me, but that's okay. I'm gonna try and let it not bother me by not thinking about it. All right, this one I'm gonna try and keep small or tiny as opposed to, because you can see how easily things can get large. So I've got my green and I'm just going to add strokes and leaving the white space in between. And then once I have that, I'm just going to get some of the other green and add a couple of strokes here to kind of make it look like it's an extension, and then just add some in the middle. All right, and that's good. So I'll leave this at this, and then we can go on to creating some other ones. Okay, next, I'm just going to use the number 8 because now we're going to tackle the mistletoe berries. So get excited. So I'm just using some of the dark green. I'm going to mix it in with what I have here. And this is what I'm going to use to lay down the leaves. And then I'll use the number 4 for the little berries themselves. And for the berries, we are going to be using this red, which is the carmine from St. Petersburg. And let's get started. So for these, okay, I don't know how I'm going to explain this, but let's see if I can. So for these, they're going to be tiny little curves to create the actual leaf. So let's do one over here, and I'm just doing a tiny curve, another one here, 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 close it up. And then I'm just going to take the other number 8, or just take any of the brushes. You might want to use something smaller, and I'm just moving the color around on the inside. So I wanted this for the shape. And then once I have that, I'm just going to rest the brush to the side, and I'll go on to doing my next one. You can take another variation of the green if you wish. But again, we're just doing tiny curves and then closing it up. Then again, with just water on your brush, you're just kind of smoothing out the color so it kind of goes to the center as well. And you have like a nice dark to light effect. And then if you want, you can kind of go back in with this brush and just give it a center if it is still damp, but it looks like these are pretty dried up already. But giving it like a nice two-tone look will kind of enhance the look and feel of this leaf to begin with. So just kind of play around with it and see what kind of textures you can get. And now once that's done, we're using the number 4 and we're going to get some of the red. And we are going to create our little berries. And you can touch the edge of some of the leaves that you've done just to kind of get a blend. It might happen, it might not happen, depending on if it's dried or not. Now, if you want to make the red a slightly darker for the third one, just dip the tip in some purple and then put it on. Remember to leave white space, guys. So you can have a nice little variation of color happening here. There we go. So we have our first one done. Now we just repeat that throughout. So next thing we're going to do is add some really tiny variations of foliage in here. And for that, you can use your umber and maybe mix it with the brown, or just use the plain umber. So I'm just getting the umber directly from here. I'm just going to mix it with the remaining green that I have. I want to do it tiny, so I'm using the number 4. And I'm going to get more of that umber, possibly mix in with that brown too. There we go. So getting that nice dark brown. And what I'm going to do is now create very fine lines. So fill up any areas you feel require additional stuff. So I'm creating these fine lines, and I want to create, dipping the tip of my brush in water, I'm just going to create some stems coming out from the vine, and then at the end I'm just going to do very tiny leaves, and you can have the leaves in the shape or form of like, I want to say egg shape, but like oval is the right term I'm looking for. So we're just going to do these little guys all around and fill up spaces where you feel need something like this. So I'll do one over here, just kind of protruding from this curve. Kind of touching the other guy, but that's okay. I'll do another one over here on this end. Kind of peeking from under the top. Oops, I have smudged this one here by mistake. All right, let's do another one around here. I'm gonna have him coming down. Just like that. Where else can I put these guys in? I'm gonna do another one over here, like a tiny version. Maybe just keep it at 3. Right, now comes for the center. We are going to do a poinsettia in the center. It's going to be very loose and very non-detailed. So I'm using the remaining of the red, and I am just using the number 8 to get a nice watery consistent, because this is what we want to do first. We want to first create a very basic layer of the petals, and so I'm just doing the regular petals on here. And if you feel like there's too much water on your brush, just use the paper towel that you should have to the side to take it off. And I'm just doing a bunch of petals in a very loose consistency. And now once this is done, just make sure you've got a lot of white space in there already, and try and leave as much space around the other elements as you can. I know it's kind of hard because it seems like it's a tight space, but I think we can make it manage, or we can make it work rather. All right, so now that I have that in there, we're gonna let this dry for a bit. And in the meantime, what I want to do is get some yellow happening over there. So I'm going to use the medium cadmium lemon, and I'm just going to get a little bit of this and just paint this area. Just like so. And then once I have a nice light finish off this on here, I'm going to take some of the raw sienna that we used previously, and I'm pushing all the color to the top. So I'm taking some of the raw sienna, which is right here, get it onto my brush just the way it is, and I just want to highlight certain areas like the bottom, some at the top, and I just want it to act like another variation of color happening in this little piece of, I guess, gold or fake gold that is on our ornament here. So once I have that, I'm gonna let that dry. Now we can go back to the floral. And so for this floral, I want to keep some of this Madder Lake red, and then I also want to keep some of my violet handy, and I'm going to get some of this on here directly onto from the palette directly on here. And these leaves, or these petals, I want them to be a lot tinier than the ones that we did here, so we're just going to go ahead and add tinier petals. You can see there's a flare up of color, and that's okay. We're just overlapping. Doesn't have to be directly on top of the other pink petals we have done. It can be in between. Again, we just want it to be loose. And pushing all the color down to the bottom, we're just getting another variant of color on here. And then as soon as we have that done, I'm just going to take my number 4 and mix some of this red with the purple. And I want the consistency to be nice and dark. And so before I apply any color, I'm just going to dab off any excess water that there is, because there seems to be some happening. And then I'm going to go in and create more petals. There seems to be a little excess water on this brush as well, so I'm just going to dab it off. Otherwise, we're not going to get that nice consistent layering look So getting more color, less water, and I'm just adding it on the inside. And I'm just going to allow this to dry a tad bit before I go back in. But on the outskirts, like in between these, I just want a very, very light consistency of this color that we've been using, and I'm just going to create some light petals in between. And if you want to give it a tad bit of color just at the edges, so it looks darker and gives it a little bit of two-dimensional depth, then totally do that. This is going to be tricky, I guess, because we have some of the leaves on here, but I'm just going to put a couple of strokes on there and then leave it. So I'm going to let that dry again some more because it's kind of now submerged into becoming one kind of big blob of color here. So as soon as this is dry, we're going to go back in. But in the meantime, we can tackle the rest of it. So for the rest of it, I just want to give, you can give this a little bit of detail. You don't have to. I'm just going to take some of the sienna that I have in this consistency that you see. So there's more water and less color. I'm just going to get a tiny bit more color in there. And I just want to add a couple of details, like maybe a double line on the inside where these little frilly things are, a little dot there, there. And I'm just giving it some detail so that it looks a little more ornamental in style and fashion, I guess. And I'm just going to add cute little lines like this to kind of make it look like it is a sun or a flower, or it could even be like whatchamacallit, snowflakes, although this would be a very different looking snowflake. But yeah, just giving it a little bit of detailed pattern, but very light, right? And that's it. I don't want to do too much, so I'm going to leave that as is. And now we will do the ribbon. So the ribbon should be fairly easy. I'm just going to turn this over so I don't get my hand in on our little poinsettia that we were doing there. And we still have to do that bit, which is going to be gold, but we can tackle that later. Let's do the ribbon first. So for the ribbon, I am picking like a purpley blue color, I guess. Or maybe I'll just mix it in with, no, we're not going to do any more red because that's a lot of red in there. So we'll do a blue. And I'm going to mix a little bit of the cobalt blue, and I'm mixing it in with, where is my azure? Yes, right here. And this is just so I can get like a nice blue that will kind of go with the rest of this look. So I'm mixing more of the cobalt, as you can see, with the azure, and I'm getting a nice blue. All right, so now that we have this, what I will do first is just get some water down in this area. And then I'm going in with this and I'm adding the blue. And I am letting it run. And then once I have that, I'm going to pull this in and get some on this side as well. And getting more color, I'm just going to add that in. This is just an easier way to kind of have the color run without you painting it along the lines. And once I have that, I will just take a tad bit of the purple that we used. I'm just experimenting. So you can either do as I'm doing or not, if it doesn't look good. And I'm just kind of blending it in with my number 8 with whatever water I have left. Now this doesn't look super wow, so if you haven't done it, that's okay, because we can just go in with a darker blue. I mean, if you have done it, sorry. That's what I was trying to say. And now we'll just take strand and put a swish of blue on here and paint the rest of it. There we go. And I'm just taking some of the azure blue and I'm just going to add a tint of it onto the center here, so it adds more dark and light, and then just some around this edge. And then I'm going to let it go. Just as soon as I smoothen this out. There we go. All right, now that's this done. Now that this is done, almost choked there, we're gonna go ahead and do that same bit over here on this side. And taking this blue that we have on here and allowing it to just swish around. Same thing on here. And I'll just mix some azure with my cobalt over here just to get a darker consistency for our edges. I want it to kind of blend in. Just gonna get some more cobalt and mix it in there. And I'm just going to swish this color over to the rest of the bow. And I actually kind of like how light this is, so you might want to leave the bow light if you don't want it to be too overpowering, and just give the artwork some hierarchy again, where the main focus is your little bauble with all the details in there, and everything else is just secondary kind of as you go around. So I will leave that up to you guys to decide, but now that you're seeing me in action, you might be able to determine what route is better for you. I'm just highlighting the edges just to get a darker feel here and then here as well. And then we can leave that as is. I'm just going to go into the center with just more of the azure blue, and I'm leaving some white space between the where the petals, sorry, the bows meet. And then finally, for the ones that are flowing down here, I'm just taking some of the color and pushing it down to our rough drawing. And this is where I guess a loose sketch helps, because you were able to determine where to kind of leave open to accommodate this bow or ribbon, tassel, whatever you want to call it. So there's one, and I will do the other one on this side. These brushes really retain a lot of water. was hoping to have finished the poinsettia quickly because, well, in the last set of things that we did, but clearly not because of excess water that I had on my brush. But that's okay, we will fix it. So just pushing up some of the darker color to kind of show that on here as it is behind the ornament and not in the front. So just trying to be a little more realistic in terms of light and shadow, but not super realistic because we are doing a loose painting. All right, so that's what that looks like. I think it's pretty. For all of you with metallics, I think you can actually get some pretty fun stuff if you want to work it. But now let's go back to the poinsettia. All right, so for the rest of the poinsettia, I've just done a dark, rich purple and red mixture. And I want the consistency to be pretty color heavy as opposed to water heavy. And then we're just gonna go ahead and do more of the petals. And try and keep it loose. Keep some white space in between. We just want to give it a little more definition as opposed to showing one big blob of color, which is what we kind of ended up with. And then, so that's why consistency for color is important in this one here. All right, and leave some space in between these petals that you are creating. And then this way it doesn't just kind of blend into one big thing. So there we go, we have that. And then while this is drying up, I wish there was more space in the middle of the flower. It would have been a lot easier and nicer, but c'est la vie. This is what we have and there isn't a lot of space, so that's totally okay. I'm just gonna quickly finish off this bit here and then I wanna give a little bit of shadow around this area. So using my sienna, I'm just going to highlight this area here where the bow is tied. And that's good enough. You could have gone with the yellow too if you wished. I just decided to use the brown sienna, so it's a tiny detail. And now finally the shadow around. And so for that I am going to use the number 8 Princeton silver black velvet, and I want to go around. See, there's my water is clearly in need of a refresher. So I'm gonna dip into my next bit of water that I have off here, and I'm just going to lightly go around. And just do one swoosh around here. I want to go from thin, like a thin layer of water, getting, I guess, thicker down. And then I am going to use a little bit of this blue that we've mixed, but I'm mixing it with a little bit of black. So I want it to be a nice shadow. That kind of encompasses around our little pretty bauble, because once we erase the markings, the pencil markings, it's not going to have anything else around it. And it's going to be pretty minimalistic. So I'm hoping the shadow will add a little something something to it. So I'm just trying to lighten the shadow as it goes higher and then comes down. And then just kind of have it extend all the way out. And by extend all the way out, I mean I'm just taking water on my brush now and I'm just wetting the rest of this area so that the color kind of seeps in and just flares out on the one side. Mainly on the side more than anything else. And I'm just gonna get a tiny bit of color and just add some to the edges. And we are almost done. Just smoothing things out. And then I think I like how this is ended up. And we'll just leave it like this. And the next thing we can do is kind of go in and erase the color, sorry, the pencils, and then we are good to go. I'm just adding extra color at the bottom here for shadow while it's nice and damp, so it's gonna give us like a nice it's actually quite nice. I wish I had done the poinsettia slightly better, but there will be more coming up. I guess because we didn't have a lot of space, but it's all good. I kind of like how it's like the final has turned out. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and then also consider subscribing to my channel, as I will be doing quite a few more holiday related items. So and I also love to see your work, so please do follow me on Instagram and Facebook and send me your work, guys. Even if you add any of the metallic stuff to it. I know some of you are big fans. I think it's a great idea, especially for the holiday season. And yeah, looking forward to hearing from you all. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.